Can we be addicted to relationships in the same way we can become addicted to drugs and alcohol? Absolutely we can. It's Ryan from the Centre for Healing here. Let me explain why. At the core of any addiction is when I'm alone, when no one else is around, when I'm completely by myself, there is some feeling there that I don't want to feel. Could be guilt, could be shame, could be anger, could be sadness, could be hurt, could be depression, could be anxiety, could be all of those things. But basically we have a feeling that we don't want to feel, and we're going to search externally to find something to make those feelings stop. Whether that's a drug or alcohol or gambling or shopping or sex or food or work or another person in a relationship, when we find something that takes away that pain, we can become addicted to it. Let's talk about how this generally plays out in a relationship addiction. So if you imagine that there's a line in front of me, right? And it's a spectrum. You have the middle of the spectrum and either end. Let's imagine the middle of the spectrum is a person that is quite well balanced. They've kind of got their shit together, okay? They've addressed a lot of their past emotional baggage, that maybe traumas that they've got, relationship issues they've had in the past. They've got a real understanding and a really high sense of self-awareness. And now from that place of feeling good, feeling complete, they maybe want to find someone who they want to share their life with because they think that'll be fun. Normally someone else who's in the middle of that spectrum as well. Now, as we move to the extreme ends of the spectrum, we have two sides. One side we'll call the victim, okay? Now, the victim has so much shit happen to them in their life and everything is someone else's fault. They won't take responsibility for everything. They've had more stuff happen to them than anyone else and none of it is their fault. The reason the victim adopts this mindset or this belief structure is because if they think that so much has happened to them and it's not their fault, then someone's going to come along and save them, to come along and rescue them. Now, the belief behind that is if someone comes along and saves me, then I'm going to get the love and attention that I so desperately need. Okay, so the real problem here is a lack of love and attention within themselves that they so desperately need it externally. That's the victim. Let's look at the other end of the spectrum. We'll call this one down this end the saver, okay, or the rescuer. Now, the saver wants to go around and fix everybody else's bloody problems. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Let me give some advice. Let me help you. Let me put myself out to go and help this person. Now, the saver we look at and go, what a great person. Look at him always helping other people. Oh, look at him in this relationship. They're helping the other person so much. The reason the saver does this comes from a very dysfunctional place as well. See, the saver believes that if I save and rescue enough people, I'll get the love and attention that I so desperately desire. Once again, it's a lack of self-love, of attention within oneself that is driving the behavior. So these two, whilst they might look different externally, both of them are coming from the same place and it's a very dysfunctional space. Now, what happens in relationships, the victim and the saver, they attract each other like you would not believe. This is where you might hear phrases like, you complete me, life would be nothing without you I'd be completely lost, right? Every love song that's ever been written is based on the victim and the saver dynamic, which is completely unhealthy and very, very dysfunctional. Now, in an ideal world, which doesn't happen very often, unfortunately, but both parties can recognize this, or one party can recognize this and say, hey, this is not working. Because what happens, it might feel good, this dynamic initially, but over time, it is completely unfulfilling. Okay, you might make each other feel good when you're together a little bit, but long term, it's very, very unfulfilling. And part of us knows that, but most of the time we just choose to ignore it for years and even decades. But if someone wakes up and said, hey, I need to do some work on myself and start to try and move myself more towards the middle of this spectrum, then ideally the other person says, hey, me too, let's come and meet in the middle and break our addiction. So we can stay together, but break our addiction to the relationship and move forward together in a much better space. Unfortunately, this isn't how it plays out most of the time. What happens, one side decides they want to start to work on themselves and start to move more towards the middle of that spectrum, okay? Starting to feel more comfortable within their own skin, not constantly seeking validation, approval, attention, love externally, and starting to find it in here. When that person starts to move closer to the middle, then it magnifies all of the shit of the other person, and they get very, very angry, very, very sad, and the relationship becomes more and more volatile, and generally it has to split, okay? Unfortunately, that's the way it plays out most of the time, but in an ideal world, and it can happen sometimes, both come together here and meet in the middle, not have this constant need for external validation and stimulus and pleasure, and can actually grow together as human beings, which is really, really beautiful. So that is how we become addicted to relationships. So it might be worth watching out, whether it's you, yourself, or a loved one. Just watch when we're getting too far out to these extremes, okay? Now, it's kind of easy to see the victim. We can pick the victim quite easily and maybe talk to them about it. I'd be more wary of looking for the saver, okay? Because the saver, you look at this dynamic and the person who's the saver gets all the adulation and everything. Oh, you're always helping other people. You're always putting yourself out for other people. You're such a good person. Oftentimes, behind that smile, behind that, I'll help you no matter what. Whatever you need, I'll be there. Behind that smile, there's there's a shadow. There's a big, big, big dark shadow that's lurking over their shoulder. So sometimes if you find someone who's being in that saver role, it'd be worth maybe having a chat to them about it, because oftentimes it's coming from this place of needing love, needing attention, and looking for it externally. So yes, we can be addicted to relationships. Just like we can be addicted to drugs, we'll find something to take away the pain that we feel when we are alone and by ourselves and there's no external stimulus. That is all from me today, guys. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful week. Peace out.